Hello, hello, hello everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Valiant Hearts: The Great War. So, this is a game I absolutely love. It is definitely one of my top fives. I will always recommend this game to people. It tells the story of five people through their experiences during the Great War. You play various levels, which will go through major historical battles, like the Battle of the Somme, Battle of Verdun, Victory Ridge, that kind of thing. And like I say, it tells the story of the five people throughout their experiences, and you kind of solve puzzles. So I really struggle to think what to categorize this game as. I would probably put it in a puzzle game. But what really makes this game stand out for me are the little snippets of information that you get. Each level they'll give you facts that kind of relate to that area. So, like for instance, if we're in Verdun, they'll give you facts around Verdun and different things. But they'll also give you facts about things that would have happened at home in the home front. And there's also collectibles that you can get in each level, and they will show various items that soldiers would have used in the trenches or people would have used back home. I will try my best to get all the collectibles if I can. I probably will miss one or two. And I will expand on the facts if I can, because I'll be honest, the First World War is a bit of a passion of mine. I don't know everything. I'm not going to say I know everything. Excuse me. I'm not going to say I know everything there is to know, because I don't. And it would be wrong of me to say so. But if I can expand on facts, I will. That's all I'm going to say. So let us jump into a game.
August 1st, 1914. After the assassination of Prince Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire declares war on Russia. Because of established alliances, France is preparing for conflict. A few hours after the announcement of the general mobilization, German civilians living in France are asked to leave the country. Karl is one of them. A few days after Karl was deported, the war was hungry for more and took away Emile as well. A heavy-hearted Emile was called up to fight and left the farm for Saint-Mihiel. Like so many others, he had no idea what fate had in store for him.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's kind of like a 2D. Well, it's a 3D scroller, but it's kind of like almost 2D kind of thing. So these are the facts that we will get in the levels. They will naturally vary and be different for each level. So, war is declared. On June 28th, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne, was assassinated in Sarajevo. As a result of the chain of diplomatic and military alliances in place, the event launched Europe into an armed conflict that, with the involvement of colonies, took on a global dimension. August the 1st, Germany declares war on Russia. August the 3rd, Germany declares war on France. August the 4th, Britain declares war on Germany. And then August the 11th and 12th, France and Britain declare war on Austria-Hungary. Now, how the First World War really started was a bit more complicated and a bit more in-depth than the game puts out. The game kind of puts out that, you know, Germany just went on a massive rampage and just started throwing out declarations of war. You get a declaration of war, you get a declaration of war, everyone gets a declaration of war. But it was a bit more in depth, so I will try my best to explain it. So, Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated in Sarajevo. Sarajevo was a city in Bosnia-Herzegovina who was annexed into the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Naturally, the Bosnians weren't too happy about this. Now, Ferdinand, he goes on this royal visit to Sarajevo on June 28th, which I believe was some sort of national holiday. I cannot remember this. I always think to look it up, but I always forget to, so just roll with it. But it was a day of significance for the Bosnians. So Ferdinand arrives with his wife Sofia. They go on this royal tour, this royal visit of Sarajevo. Now, the man who assassinated Ferdinand was a man called Gavrilo Princip, and he was a Serb nationalist. He was a member of a group called the Black Hand Gang. Now, the Black Hand Gang were the members, you know, responsible for the assassination. There were a couple of attempts on Ferdinand's life throughout the day. One of the attempts was one of the members threw a bomb at the car, and it kind of bounced off the car and hit someone else's car. Now, Ferdinand's driver, he takes a wrong turn along this route, and it takes him right past, or he takes him right next to Princip. Princip runs out from the crowd, pulls out his pistol, and fires 2 shots. One killing Ferdinand, and the other killing Sofia. I like to call this the 2 shots that killed millions of people, but call it what you will. Now, this is where things get a bit complicated, because Europe in 1914 was effectively split into 2 factions. You had the Central Powers, which were the German Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Italy. Italy would eventually leave the Central Powers and join the Allies. And the Ottoman Empire, or Turkey, they would join the Central Powers. And the Allies, or the Triple Entente, British Empire, French Empire, Russian Empire. Now, it's also worth noting that Tsar Nicholas, King George, and Kaiser Wilhelm, they were all related. I think they were cousins, but Queen Victoria was their grandmother. So, now that Franz Ferdinand's been assassinated, this is kind of where the declarations of war start going out like Christmas cards. Because Austro-Hungary declares war on Serbia. And that's kind of where it should have ended, but it didn't. Now, Russia, because they were allied to Serbia, they declare war on Austria-Hungary. Germany is allied to Austria-Hungary, so they declare war on Russia. Germany then also declares war on France, because France is allied to Russia. Now, the reason Britain declares war on Germany isn't because of the assassination, or isn't because they're a member of the Triple Entente. It's actually for a different reason, which is something I will get into in just a moment. But eventually, Britain declares war on Germany, then Britain and France declare war on Austria-Hungary. So now World War I has started. Okay. The barracks and the regiment. Battalions comprised of a battalion headquarters and 4 companies, a total of 1,007 men in all. Companies were composed of 4 platoons, in turn divided into 4 sections each of 12 men, commanded by an NCO, or non-commissioned officer. NCOs were basically corporals, sergeants, sergeant majors, anyone between the ranks of a corporal and a lieutenant. Britain was slow to mobilise on the Western Front. Half of its army was overseas, and with a genuine fear of invasion, infantry divisions were held in reserve in Britain and not included in the British Expeditionary Force. While conscription only came into force in 1916, voluntary enlistment was initially overwhelming, with 750,000 men eager to show their patriotism. Now, at the outbreak of war, most European nations, they introduced conscription from the get-go. Now, conscription means that any man, because it was only men at that time, any man between the ages of, I think, 18 and 50-something. I want to say 55. I don't know why. But between the ages of 18 and 50, if your country required you to fight. You were bound by law to fight. You had no say in it. Okay, because we saw in the cutscene that Emile got his calling up papers, so he was conscripted into the French army. There were circumstances, there were circumstances that meant you were exempt from conscription. One of which was medical grounds. There were a few medical conditions that meant that the army could not take you. One, I believe, now I'm not 100% sure on this, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. One of the reasons was respiratory problems. So if you suffer with like shortness of breath, or like heart problems or breathing problems or anything like that, you were not able to fight in the army. And the army, because you would always have to go for a medical anyway before you recruited into the barracks, just so that they can say, right, you are definitely fit to fight. Another reason I believe, and again I could be wrong on this one, is eyesight. If your eyesight was really bad, I don't think they would take you. I think deafness may have been a reason as well. So if you were deaf, they obviously couldn't take you because you wouldn't be able to give them orders because they couldn't hear you. Profession was also another reason that you were exempt. So if your profession meant that you were of use to the home front or to the war effort at home, you were able to stay at home and carry on with that profession. Veterinarians, I believe, were one profession. I think grocers were as well. And I'm sure there were other professions. Now, Britain didn't introduce conscription until 1916 because initially we relied on volunteers. We relied on encouraging people to fight. And at the outbreak of war anyway, there was this huge surge in patriotism. Men wanted to fight for their king and country, fight the vile Hun. But by 1916, there was a risk of a shortage of manpower because casualties were rising, enlistment was falling, and news was travelling home about what the conditions were like in the trenches, and not everyone wanted to go through that. But by 1916, now I don't know if it was before or after the Somme, because that would be interesting to find out. But eventually in 1916, we did introduce conscription. Railways. With the outbreak of war, each country was eager to dispatch its army in situ as quickly as possible to gain the advantage. Railways were essential for mobilisation and supply. By August of 1914, the British realised the importance of rallying the war effort and dispatched Royal Engineers to the front to build new lines. By 1917, 40,000 enlisted railway soldiers were working for the RE in France and Flanders. And the debacle of August 1914. In the early fighting, the German army made swift progress. After invading Belgium, they marched on Paris in late August. French troops retreated en masse and units were outflanked and repelled, taken prisoner or killed. The months of August to September of 1914 marked the bloodiest period of the war, with over 180,000 French casualties alone. The French authorities described the debacle as an organised retreat. The war to win over public opinion had begun. Now, this is the reason that Britain declares war on Germany. So, there was a plan drawn up by a General von Schlieffen, very imaginatively named the Schlieffen Plan. And the plan was that if Germany was ever caught up in a war against France again, they would put the Schlieffen Plan into effect. And what it meant was that they would advance, or they would march through Belgium, which was probably neutral at the time. They would march through neutral Belgium, go through northern France, and march on Paris. And it was estimated it would only take them a couple of weeks to achieve this. Now, when the First World War started, Germany put the Schlieffen Plan into effect because they were in a bad spot. Long term, Germany could never sustain a war on two fronts. You had the Russian Empire in the east, and of course you had the French over in the west. Now, the Germans had a brief window of opportunity because the Russians were slow to mobilise. So the Germans put the Schlieffen Plan into effect. They marched through neutral Belgium, invading Belgium, which is why Britain declares war on Germany, because they wanted to uphold Belgian neutrality. Germans march through northern France and they get to within 20 miles of Paris. Now, the Schlieffen Plan does fail for several reasons. One, is that Russia mobilised earlier than anticipated, so the Germans then had to reallocate troops from the west back over to the east. Second reason was supplies. German supplies couldn't keep up with the advancing infantry. And another reason was the Battle of the Marne. So the French forces, along with British forces, managed to hold off the German advance. So the Battle of the Marne, the British and the French, they stood their ground, and they managed to thwart the main German attack. Now, yeah, so basically what this level does, it kind of introduces us to the game. So it will teach us how to, basically how to use the controls. Now, there is one thing I do want to say before we kind of really knuckle into this. Normally when I play games, and normally when I do Let's Plays, I like to try and keep it comical. You know, try to be jovial. Because of the serious nature of this game and what it's trying to portray, it's going to be hard for me to do that. Because I don't want to force jokes, if that makes sense. Like, the last thing I want to do is make jokes about a serious event. If it comes naturally, it happens, okay? But I'm not going to force a joke just because it's YouTube. Okay, I want to show just how serious this period of history can be. So I hope you understand, and I really hope that it's not going to, you know, affect your viewing pleasure. Also, my mouth is now as dry as a camel's arsehole. And I'm trying to drink, but I don't want it to come up on the recording. So we are now part of the Republic of France's 150th Regiment of Infantry. Great. At least we're not in the cavalry.
My dear Marie, we are on our way to Paris. The atmosphere here is...
Also, it doesn't matter how many times I play this game, I also always get that action completed pop up.
They've always been
every
gracious
time.
and charitable people. I'll write again as soon as I get my assignment. Please kiss my little grandson for me.
At the train depot in Paris, trying to reach his regiment at platform 21, Emile would meet the man he would soon fight alongside. The man who would come to be his truest friend.
So this is technically still the same level, because the facts are still the same, and the collectibles are like carried over to the next level, or to this level I should say. So this guy wants some white wine. I'll be honest, I don't know the difference between white wine and red wine, apart from the very obvious colour. It all smells like rat's piss to me. So, and it probably tastes like rat's piss too. I'm always like amazed when people are like, ah yes, this wine has a delicate bouquet of rat's urine. It's very nice. So there are diaries as well, but I won't go through the diaries because, at least not at this point, because I don't really want to spoil any of the characters. So we have to get these guys playing in a certain order. Now, one of the many good things about this game is the fact that if you fail a puzzle, you can just retry. There's no like, oh, you've got to restart the level because you're an idiot. It's just like it will probably reset the puzzle, so you can just try again. Metal nibs. In 1914, birays did not yet exist, and at school, children learned to write with metal nibs, or more often, and especially in the countryside, with whittled goose feathers. The sheer volume of war correspondence saw metal nibs become more widespread. Letter from a French soldier. August 14th, 1914. Dear parents, I'm all set to be mobilised to the front. We're going to take Alsace and Lorraine back from the Germans. Don't worry, I'll be home before Christmas, all my love. Marcel. So there wasn't a person alive in 1914 who would have imagined that the Great War would have lasted for as long as it did. Okay. Everyone thought it would have just been a quick, short war just to kind of release the tension, release the pressure, almost. So everyone thought it would have just been over by Christmas. I mean, they were right to a point, to a degree, because it was over by Christmas, but 4 years late. So, were they wrong? I don't know, maybe. A station master's whistle. Steam trains made stations very noisy places. There were no loudspeakers and no display panels, so platform officials had to shout train information to passengers. Whistles were the best way to attract passengers' attention. A tinder lighter. While petrol lighters were popular in the trenches, soldiers also used tinder lighters. The cotton wick was doused in saltpeter or lead chromate to make it more readily inflammable, and was extinguished by simply drawing the wick back into the cylinder. And the German helmet. The legendary pointed German helmet, or the Pickelhaube, was used by German forces until 1916, and was then replaced by much more efficient steel helmets. The different parts of the helmet, including the point for defense against saber attack, were adapted according to the rank, origin and weapon used by the soldier. On some helmets the point was rounded. So in 1914 and early 1915, soldiers went into battle wearing cloth caps or in the Germans' case, these leather helmets. As the war progressed, head casualties started to increase because you had shrapnel flying around, you had snipers, bullets, all that jazz. And head casualties were starting to rise. So the commanders were getting a bit concerned, so they started to introduce steel helmets. Now, I believe the French were the first to do this around 1915, and then everyone else started doing it then. It didn't offer great protection, but it offered some protection, to say the least. Now, with the German helmet, all the soldiers wore these until 1916, and then they started to slowly, gradually introduce the Stahlhelm, or the steel helmet. However, officers still wore the leather helmet, the Pickelhaube, until, well, throughout the entirety of the war, because they probably saw it as a symbol of authority and position. So most of the officers would have still wore these helmets. And as it says, the point at the top, and I'm really hoping you can see my compass, but the point at the top would have been different depending on what branch of the army you were in. So if you were in the infantry, that would have been the point, you know, the dagger top. If you were in the cavalry, it would have been like a cube, like a square cube type thing. And if you were in the artillery, it would have been like a round cannonball almost. But like I said, by 1916, everyone was wearing steel helmets, especially in 1917-18. Good luck, my friend.
August 21st, 1914. Emile's regiment was sent to fight against the 71st German Division, led by Baron von Dorf. The general cheer of the first hours
I like to call him Baron von Dorf,
the fear of first combat.
because he's a dork in my opinion. Oh, look at us carrying our little flag. Vive la France! So naturally, with the many hazards of the First World War, you will be doing a lot of avoiding enemy fire, whether it be artillery, machine guns, gas, and all the rest. If you die in this game, like most of the time it's mainly a one-hit kill. Well, it is a one-hit kill for all cases, really. You will just go back to the last checkpoint, and I'll be honest, they are very generous with the checkpoints in this game. Like, if you do die, you'll most likely just go back like a couple seconds at most, or maybe a minute or two. It just kind of depends where you died, really. But if you see shadows on the ground, it usually means that's something you need to avoid. Or if you see like a spray of machine gun bullets, that's something you need to avoid.
Emile.
Miss Marie Chillon. Private Emile Chillon from the 150th Infantry Regiment was wounded by enemy fire on August 21st. He has been captured by the enemy. Hopefully, you shall receive news from him soon. Freddy, originally from America, enlisted voluntarily in the French forces at the start of the war. Behind his bravery hid a man already devastated by the war's.
I always love him in that little suit of his.
With
He looks so
one
dapper.
sole obsession, punish those
His little pimp cane as
who had
well.
destroyed his life. It was at the Battle of the Marne that Freddy finally picked up the trail of the regiment commanded by Baron von Dorf.
It's Von Dork. Get it right. Right, so that is going to be it for this episode. So thank you so much everyone for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I really hope you come back and watch some more, because I am going to enjoy playing this again. I know I am. So I hope you'll have a wonderful day. Look after yourselves, and I will see you next time.